Mom slept with my husband. And then they blamed me for ruining the family. The words still echo in my mind, days after I spoke them aloud for the first time. Not in a therapy session. Not to a friend. I said them while dragging my suitcase across the hardwood floor, my fingers trembling with rage I hadn't known I was capable of. It was raining outside that day, like the sky couldn't help but mourn with me. I didn't slam the front door when I left. I didn't scream. That would have been too easy. Instead, I walked out silently, calmly, and let the thunder do the shouting for me. I was Claire Morgan, 38, interior designer, wife of Eric Morgan for 11 years, daughter of Richard and Marjorie Bennett, the kind of parents who smiled too brightly in public and tore each other to pieces behind closed doors. We were the kind of family that looked put together from the outside. And maybe that's why I stayed so long. We were in the living room when it happened. Mom sat on the edge of the armchair, legs crossed like she was the victim. Eric stood behind her like some lifeless statue. He couldn't even look me in the eye. My sister, Lena, stood by the fireplace, eyes darting between us like this was a courtroom drama. I still remember every word. "Claire, don't make this more dramatic than it already is," Mom had said, voice steady, like she was discussing paint samples. It was a mistake. We were both vulnerable. Vulnerable? That's what she called it? Sleeping with my husband for over a year? Eric finally opened his mouth. "Claire, I never meant for it to." "To what?" I snapped. "To be discovered?" No one denied it. Not once. They didn't bother. They just looked at me like I was the problem. "You've always been intense," Lena offered weakly. "Hard to connect with." I stared at her like she had just slapped me. "Are you blaming me?" Silence. And that's when I realized it. I wasn't just betrayed. I was invisible. Dispensable. The scapegoat in a story someone else was writing for me. So I left. The apartment I rented downtown isn't much, but it's mine. The mattress on the floor creaks every time I move, and the kitchen sink leaks when I forget to tighten the faucet. But there's peace here. A kind of quiet that doesn't carry secrets behind every wall. The first call came a week after I left. I didn't answer. Neither the second nor the third. 19 calls in total. All from family. No voicemails. No texts. Not once did they say sorry. I sip my coffee and watch the rain streak down the window. Something about it reminds me of that day again. The storm, the tension, the feeling that my entire life was collapsing under its own weight. The betrayal didn't start that day. I think I always knew something was off. But when you're raised in a family like mine, silence is survival. You don't ask. You don't push. You just smile, say thank you, and make sure your knees are always crossed like your mother taught you. But I do remember the beginning of the unraveling. It was last Christmas, back at the family house in Michigan. Snow piled along the windowsills. The fireplace roared. Everyone was drinking eggnog and pretending we weren't suffocating in each other's presence. I caught Eric and Mom laughing in the kitchen. He leaned in too close. She touched his arm too long. Something twisted in my gut, but I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. The truth is, this wasn't about sex. Not really. It was about power. Control. About a mother who couldn't stand that her daughter had something she once had and lost. Or maybe never truly had at all. My phone buzzes again. This time it's Lena. I stare at the screen until the call goes to voicemail. No message. Just like the rest. Why now? Why all the calls after the silence? What changed? I toss the phone aside and open the drawer I've been avoiding. Inside, photos, notes, a wedding invitation now bent at the corners. And one folded piece of paper, the one I found 2 weeks before everything blew up. It was a receipt from a boutique hotel near the lake. Eric had said he was on a work trip, but the charge was for 2 guests. 1 king bed. Champagne and strawberries. He never liked champagne. But she did. That was the first crack. The first undeniable truth. I put the receipt back, close the drawer, and press my palms against the countertop. My reflection in the window stares back, hollowed eyes, jaw clenched, but standing. Still standing. I've replayed the last day at the house over and over. What I said. What I didn't say. The part that keeps haunting me is the look on my father's face. He didn't say much. Just looked down at the floor like he wasn't surprised at all. Did he know? A gust of wind rattles the glass. I grab my sweater from the chair and wrap it tight. They blamed me for everything. They said I was cold, controlling, distant. Maybe I was all of that, but I was never a liar. They can't call me selfish for leaving. Not when staying meant dying a little more every day. Still, something about those calls keeps scratching at the edge of my thoughts. My family never reaches out unless they want something. Which leaves me with one question. What the hell do they want now? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? I stopped answering the phone after the 5th call. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. Every ring stirred something old and unsettled inside me. The way your body flinches when you hear the doorbell late at night, even though you're not expecting anyone. You freeze. You hope it stops. But it doesn't. By the 20th missed call, my phone looked like a memorial to ghosts I hadn't buried yet. I let the coffee go cold in my hands, scrolling through the missed calls without touching a single one. Dad. Lena. Mom. Mom again. No messages. Just silence where apologies should be. My reflection stared back at me in the black screen. Hair pulled up in a careless knot. Tired eyes. Bare shoulders in an old college sweatshirt. I looked like a woman surviving. Barely. But I'm not the same woman who left that house. Back then, I was Claire Morgan. Good daughter, good wife. Controlled. Controlled by my mother's backhanded compliments and my husband's distant affection. By a family that worshipped appearances, no matter how rotten the core. Now I'm just Claire. And I'm still figuring out what that even means. I remember being 8 years old, sitting at the dinner table with my hands in my lap, terrified of saying the wrong thing. Elbows off the table, Marjorie would whisper, even if my arms were nowhere near it. My father, Richard, would read the paper like we weren't even there. And Lena, for years younger than me, spoiled and perfect, would do something wrong and get a chuckle from Mom for being charming. I was the quiet one. The careful one. You're too serious, Claire, Mom would say. Try smiling more. Men don't like brooding girls. Even then, I think I knew. I was the placeholder. The one expected to be perfect, but never praised. Lena was chaos wrapped in a smile. I was structure with a locked jaw. The first time I brought Eric home, Mom looked him up and down like he was merchandise. Tall, polite, not bad looking. He'll do. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. From the beginning, she hovered. Chose the flower arrangements for the wedding. Criticized my choice of cake. Asked Eric if he was sure he liked the dress I picked. I should have noticed it sooner, the way she stood too close. The way she always poured his wine first. But what daughter wants to believe her mother would cross that line? So I did what I always did, ignored the voice inside me that screamed something was wrong. Today, the rain's gone, but the sky's still heavy with gray. I open the window a crack and let in the cool air. The scent of wet asphalt and distant traffic fills the room. The phone buzzes again. Lena. She was the last person to speak to me before I walked out. And even then, all she offered were vague warnings and excuses. You've been acting paranoid, Claire. Don't let this destroy you. You always take things too personally. Always. That word clings to me like mildew. It turns your pain into personality. Like you were born to be a problem. And yet, here she is. Calling again. Trying again. Why? I scroll to the most recent call. Just a missed connection, no message. But something about the persistence makes me pause. They don't reach out unless something's wrong. I open my laptop. Distractions help. I try to focus on a design mock-up for a new client. Neutral palettes, earth tones, minimalist lighting. It's almost laughable how much I crave clean lines now, as if they can somehow undo the chaos of the last few months. My phone buzzes a third time. This time, it's a number I don't recognize. No name. Just a long line of digits and a voicemail notification. I don't want to listen, but I do. One new message, a pause, then a voice I haven't heard in weeks. Claire, it's Lena. Please, call me back. It's Dad. He's in the hospital. It's bad. He's been asking for you. I sit there, frozen. The room suddenly feels too small. Dad? The man who barely looked at me as I packed my things. Who said nothing when I confronted Mom and Eric. Who lowered his eyes like a coward and let me carry the shame they should have shouldered. He wants to see me? My instinct is to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I hold it in my lap, staring at nothing. Why now? Is he dying? Is this about guilt? Or am I just another box to check before the end? The truth is, I didn't hate my father. I wanted him to choose me, to defend me. Just once. But he never did. I was 13 the first time I caught him lying. He said he was working late. I found lipstick on his shirt collar. Not Mom's shade. She wore cool tones. This was red, bold, and completely wrong. I kept it to myself. What was I going to do? Say something and watch my family implode? Now, I wonder if that moment, that secret, was where the rot began. Where the idea took root in Mom's head that betrayal was a two-way street. That she was owed something back. My family never apologized. We moved on like nothing happened. That was the way it worked. Until I didn't move on. Until I stopped playing the role. And now they're calling. I sit on the edge of the bed, the voicemail still ringing in my ears. Should I go? Do I owe him anything? Do I want answers? There's a whisper inside me. Not quite fear. Not quite hope. Just one question, circling like a shark. If he's been asking for me, what is he finally ready to say? I used to believe there was a moment when things break, one sharp, clean crack that lets you point and say, there, that's when it happened. But it's rarely that simple. Most of the time, it's a slow erosion. A series of almosts. A look held too long. A touch that lingers a beat too late. A lie so small you barely notice it, until the weight of all of them collapses on top of you. Before everything fell apart, we were a normal couple. Or at least, we looked like one. Eric and I met in grad school. He was charming in a quiet way. The kind of man who listens more than he talks, who smiles with his eyes, who makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. I didn't fall in love quickly, but when I did, I fell hard. He proposed under a red maple tree in Grant Park. I remember the exact chill in the air, the way my hands were trembling, not from cold, but from disbelief that someone like him had chosen someone like me. I said yes, and my life began folding itself into his. We bought a small house on the edge of Evanston. I repainted the walls, one soft neutral at a time, while he built shelves in the garage and watched Sunday football like it was a religion. On weekends, we'd drive up to the lake. Talk about future kids. A dog. Maybe two. And then came the wedding. That's when the first line cracked across the glass. Mom inserted herself into everything. The guest list. The color scheme. Even the seating arrangement. She told Eric to reconsider the flower choices because white lilies looked too much like a funeral. He laughed it off. I did too, at first. She told me my dress looked a little plain and suggested I try something more fitted. She even brought a second option with her to the fitting, as if she expected me to change my mind. Eric didn't defend me. Not once. He just said, she means well, every single time. I started to feel like a guest in my own life. But still, I convinced myself this was normal. Just a mother wanting to be part of her daughter's big day. What I didn't see, what I didn't want to see, was the way Eric started calling her Marjorie instead of your mom. The way they'd laugh together in the kitchen, a shared glance over wine glasses. The way she'd compliment his shirts or touch his shoulder when he walked by. It was subtle. Too subtle to confront. But it was there. There's one night I can't forget. 6 months after the wedding. We were hosting my parents for dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and wine. Mom brought a bottle of something she claimed was too expensive for any of you to appreciate. She made that joke a lot. I was in the kitchen finishing the salad. Eric was at the stove, stirring the sauce. I excused myself to take a call from a client. When I came back, the room was quiet. They didn't hear me walk in. Mom was standing behind Eric, hand resting on his back. Not in a maternal way. In an intimate way. Her voice was low, almost playful. You know, if Claire ever gives you trouble, you can always run away with me. Eric laughed, too loudly, too easily. I stepped into the room, and they jumped apart like kids caught in the liquor cabinet. No one said anything. We just ate dinner like nothing happened. Like I hadn't just watched something shift under the surface of my marriage. Later that night, I asked Eric about it. He brushed me off. She's just being Marjorie. She flirts with everyone. Even your dad. He kissed me and turned off the lights. But something inside me had already turned on. Back in the present, I'm sitting at my tiny kitchen table, laptop open, cursor blinking on an untouched email draft. It's from Lena, sent just an hour ago. Subject: Dad. Claire, please. Call me. He's asking for you. It might be serious. We don't know how long. I close the lid. This isn't guilt. It's calculation. They're trying to bring me back into the fold. Now that it benefits them. Now that their version of the story doesn't work without me in it. I wonder if Mom is sitting in that hospital room now, carefully dabbing the corners of her eyes with a tissue. The grieving wife. The stoic mother. The woman who stole from her daughter and never once said the word sorry. And Eric, where is he? Is he sitting by her side? Does he feel any of this? Or did he do what I should have done months ago, run, disappear, start over? There's a knock at my door. 3 soft taps. My breath catches. No one knows I live here. No one should know. I tiptoe across the floor, peeking through the peephole. It's no one I recognize. A courier, maybe. Middle-aged. Jacket. Cap. A plain manila envelope in hand. I crack the door just enough to speak. Yes. Delivery for Claire Morgan, he says, holding it out. No signature? Just drop off. He hands it to me and walks away before I can ask more. I close the door and lock it. Twice. The envelope has no return address. Just my name. Clean, block letters. No handwriting. Inside, a printed photo. It's old. Glossy. Faded at the edges. Eric. My mother. Together. On a dock I don't recognize. Arms around each other. Not kissing. But close enough to make my skin crawl. The timestamp reads, August 17th. He told me he was in Seattle that week. At a business retreat. I remember it clearly because I had the flu. I'd been in bed for 3 days straight, alone in that house, barely able to stand. I remember texting him, miss you. He didn't reply until the next morning. The photo shakes in my hand. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. It started long before I found that hotel receipt. And now, someone out there wants me to know. The photo sat on the table like a loaded gun. Eric. Marjorie. August 17th. I ran my fingers along the edge of the print. Not trembling. Not shocked. I think some part of me had been waiting for this. Craving confirmation that I hadn't imagined at all, that the hollow in my gut had a name, a date, and a location. They were on a dock, arms wrapped around each other. His smile wasn't forced. Hers was radiant. She wore the blue sundress I told her I liked once, and she'd said, this old thing, like she'd already decided it wasn't for me. The timestamp clung to the bottom right corner like it was mocking me. August 17th. He told me he was in Seattle that weekend. But I remember that week, not because of anything special, but because I was sick. Fevered. Alone. I'd texted Eric a dozen times. I even asked him to FaceTime, just to hear his voice. He said he was busy with work dinners, team building exercises. That's why he couldn't talk long. He never liked video calls. Now I knew why. I go to the drawer again, the one I've avoided since I left. The drawer full of small things that didn't make sense at the time. A hotel receipt. A credit card statement with a charge from a restaurant we never visited together. A birthday card I never received, with handwriting that wasn't mine. Can't wait to celebrate again soon. Same spot. My breath sticks in my throat. My hands know where to go before I even think. Tucked in the back is the one thing I kept but never confronted. A key card from a boutique hotel in Michigan. Slipped into one of Eric's jacket pockets the week after our 10-year anniversary. He told me it was from a client meeting. Said he'd only stayed one night. I remember asking, "Why didn't you tell me you were out of town?" His answer had been smooth. "Didn't want to worry you." The first lie. It seemed so small at the time. Just a ripple. But looking back now, I see the wave it started. I hadn't planned to be back at the family house anytime soon, but now I need something. Not closure. Not forgiveness. Answers. I check my phone again. Still nothing from Lena since that voicemail. I grab my coat, the envelope, and my keys. As I walk out the door, I realize something odd. I'm not afraid anymore. Not of the truth. Not of them. I drive for hours, leaving the gray skyline of Chicago behind. The further I get, the more familiar everything becomes. Old roads, quiet towns, gas stations that haven't changed since I was in high school. By the time I pull into the driveway of the house I used to call home, the sky is overcast again. The front porch still creaks. The light over the garage still flickers. Lena's car is parked outside. I press the photo tight in my coat pocket before knocking on the door. No answer. I knock again. Harder. Footsteps shuffle on the other side. Then silence. When the door opens, it's Lena. Her face is pale. Eyes red. Hair tied back like she's aged 10 years in 2 weeks. "Claire," she breathes, surprised but not upset. "You came." "I got your message," I say. "About Dad." She nods and steps aside to let me in. The house is too quiet. No music. No TV. Just the hum of appliances and the distant creak of old wood. "He's at the hospital now," she says. "Mom's with him." I needed a break. I glance around. Everything's the same. The same couch. Same rug. Same picture of our family above the fireplace, the one we took 10 Christmases ago, before everything curdled behind our eyes. Lena watches me carefully. "You look different." I am. She nods like she understands, but we both know she doesn't. "Is he dying?" I ask. "I don't know. He had a stroke. They're still running tests." There's a long silence before I speak again. "Why didn't he call me himself?" She shrugs, voice soft. "He asked for you yesterday." Barely got the words out. "Said your name like it hurt to say it." Good. She doesn't say that, of course. But it's in the air between us. I pull the photo from my coat and hold it out. She stares. "I got this in the mail yesterday," I say. "No note. No return address." Her mouth tightens. Her eyes flicker. "I had nothing to do with that," she says quickly. I swear. "I didn't say you did. But you think I knew. Did you?" She hesitates. "I suspected something," she finally says. "They were close. Too close." I wait. She doesn't continue. "You let me think I was crazy." "You didn't want to hear it," she snaps back. "You never wanted to hear anything that didn't fit your version of things. You were always so sure." "I was sure because no one else would be," I say. "Because if I didn't hold the line, no one would." Lena turns away. Her shoulders tense. "I didn't know how to tell you." "Then you should have tried." Silence again. I scan the room. There's something different. A tension in the walls. A quiet that isn't peaceful. It's suffocating. Where's Eric? I ask suddenly. Lena turns back slowly. He's not here. He left. When? Couple days after you did. That's not what Marjorie said. She told me he left after the blow-up. As if guilt got the better of him. But if he left so quickly, maybe it wasn't guilt. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe. Did he say anything? I ask. Just that he couldn't stay here. That everything was poisoned. Poisoned. Interesting choice of words. I fold the photo back into my pocket and head toward the door. Where are you going? Lena asks. To see Dad, I say. And after that, to find out how deep this goes. Because I'm starting to think the betrayal wasn't the whole story. It was just the beginning. Hospitals always smell like bleach and unfinished business. I step into the ICU, my boots sticking faintly on the polished floor. It's cold in here, colder than I remember, and silent in a way that doesn't feel peaceful. Just suspended. Like the building is holding its breath along with everyone in it. Dad's room is at the end of the corridor. Room 412. The door's half open. I pause in the threshold before stepping in. He looks smaller now. My father, Richard Bennett, the man who once loomed large over our dinner table, who cleared his throat and the whole room fell quiet, lies there surrounded by wires and tubes, skin pale, lips cracked. A shell. There's a chair beside his bed, slightly askew. A half-empty cup of coffee on the windowsill. A folded blanket that still smells like Marjorie's perfume. She's been here. I sit. I don't touch his hand. I don't say his name. I just look at him, the man who never defended me, never said no to her, never stepped between me and the storm. He opens his eyes slowly. It takes a second for them to focus. And then he sees me. His mouth moves. No sound. I lean in, not kindly. Just close enough. What do you want, Dad? His lips part again. His voice is barely more than a scratch on the air. You came. I didn't come for you, I say. You asked for me. So here I am. He tries to lift his hand. It twitches, but doesn't move far. I needed to tell you. His breath catches. I knew. I freeze. You knew what? His eyes close for a moment, and I think he's passed out again. But then they flutter open. I knew about them, he whispers. A long time ago. The room tilts slightly. How long? He swallows. Before the wedding. I stare at him like I've been slapped. You knew Mom and Eric were involved before we got married? He doesn't nod. He doesn't deny it. Why didn't you stop it? I ask, voice rising. Why didn't you say anything? His voice comes low and tight. Because I thought she'd let him go. And you were happy. You looked happy. You let me marry a man who was already cheating on me with my own mother? I didn't think it would last, he says, like that somehow justifies everything. I thought she was just punishing me. The words hit harder than I expect. Punishing him? I lean back. Wait, you think she did this because of you? He doesn't answer right away. His eyes drift to the window. She found out. About someone. Years ago. I wasn't careful. A woman in Detroit. It was nothing. My breath catches. You cheated on her? His eyes flick to me. No denial. That was her response? I ask, stunned. She seduced my husband because you had an affair? I don't know, he says, voice ragged. But it started after that. She changed. She hated the quiet. Hated me. And when Eric came around, he trails off, ashamed. I sit in stunned silence. All these years, I thought my mother's cruelty was born from pride. Or insecurity. Or boredom. But no, it was revenge. Not against me. Against him. And I was just the weapon she used. The silence between us thickens. I tried to stop it, he says. I told Eric to walk away. I begged him. My stomach turns. When? 3 months before the wedding. I stare at him. 3 months. 3 months before I said yes in front of all our friends and family. 3 months before I put on the dress she picked apart and kissed the man who'd already chosen her. You didn't think I deserved to know? I thought she'd ruin you if I did. She ruined me anyway. He doesn't answer. He closes his eyes again. I want to scream. I want to tear the 4 out of his arm and shake him awake and shout, "You let her do this to me." But I don't. Because I know something now. This family didn't fall apart. It was constructed this way. Every betrayal was built on the one before it. And every silence, every choice to say nothing became permission. I stand. Does Lena know? His eyes flick open again. She suspects. But no. I nod once. I won't tell her, I say. Yet. He swallows. Claire. I'm not here to make peace, I say. I'm here to make sense of it. And then I'm gone. He tries to speak again, but I walk out before I have to hear it. Back at the apartment that night, I stare at my ceiling fan spinning in slow circles. My mind's racing. Mom. Eric. Dad. All tangled in a web that started long before I ever put on that engagement ring. And now there's more. If Marjorie used Eric to punish Dad, did she stop there? Was I the only one sacrificed? Or were there more lies layered beneath this one? I check my phone. No new calls. No texts. But in my inbox, there's a new email. From unknown. Subject: Thought you'd want this. Attached is a single file. A voicemail. Audio only. I press play. Eric's voice comes through. Muffled. Drunk. Rambling. You think I loved her? You think any of this was about love? She blackmailed me. You don't get it. You never did. She made me choose, Claire. I chose wrong. My stomach drops. Blackmail? Choose what? The file ends. And just like that, the story shatters again. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The voicemail played on a loop in my head. She blackmailed me. I kept hearing it in Eric's voice, slurred, half-broken, drunk enough to be honest. There was no apology. No guilt. Just that one line, like it explained everything. It didn't. It made things worse. She didn't just seduce him. She owned him. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, the photo of Eric and Marjorie still resting nearby like a crime scene snapshot. I stared at the screen, trying to piece it all together. Why would Eric stay? Why would he keep lying for her even after everything exploded? And if she had something on him, what was it? Money? No. Eric made good money on his own. He didn't need hers. Reputation? Maybe. But that wasn't enough to keep a man locked in for years. Unless it was something worse. Something criminal. I pulled out the old receipts again. The hotel, the restaurant, the birthday card. One of them had a name I hadn't looked into before. The Belmont Inn. The card had the same logo printed in gold on the inside corner. Can't wait to celebrate again soon. Same spot? I searched their site. A small boutique hotel on the lakeshore. Elegant. Private. Popular with politicians and quiet affairs. A memory flickered. I remembered one night, 3 years ago, when Eric came home later than usual. His shirt unbuttoned at the collar. No explanation. No apology. Just long day. Don't ask. I didn't ask. God help me, I didn't ask. But now I did. I picked up the phone and dialed the Belmont Inn. When the manager answered, I didn't waste time. Hi, yes. I'm trying to confirm a previous guest, Eric Morgan. August 17th, 3 years ago. There was a pause. I'm sorry, ma'am. We can't give out that kind of. It's not a legal inquiry, I said quickly. It's a personal one. There may have been a safety issue. I believe he was there with a woman who's not his wife. I'm not looking for scandal. I'm looking for answers. A long pause. I'll check. I waited, heart thudding. When she returned, her voice was different. Cautious. Controlled. I'm not supposed to say this. But yes, he was here. He checked in with a woman. She booked the room under her name. My mouth dried out. What name? Another pause. Marjorie Bennett. Of course she did. No aliases. No secrecy. She was brazen. She wanted a record. She wanted to be found by someone. Anyone. She wanted control. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. The pieces were finally falling together, but the picture was uglier than I ever imagined. She blackmailed Eric not with money, not with threats of exposure, but with something deeper. She held his shame like a leash. And he let her. I drove back to Lena's that evening. I didn't warn her I was coming. She opened the door in a hoodie and leggings, her face still tired, her expression tense when she saw me. Claire, where's Mom? She blinked. Still at the hospital, I think. Why? I need to talk to her. Alone. Lena hesitated, looking past me. What's going on? Eric didn't just cheat, I said quietly. She made him stay. Lena stepped aside slowly, letting me in. What do you mean? I showed her the photo. The card. The voicemail. She had something over him. I don't know what, exactly. But he admitted it. Lena sank onto the couch. Her face was pale, unreadable. You think she forced him into it? No, I said. I think she seduced him first. Then kept him with something worse. And he just let it happen? He made his choice. But so did she. Lena rubbed her forehead. Why would Mom go that far? What did she get out of it? Power? Over who? Not just him, I said. Over me. Over Dad. Over you too. Lena looked up, surprised. You think she's used me? She's used all of us. The door creaked behind us. We turned. Marjorie stood in the doorway, keys in one hand, scarf half pulled off. Her face was unreadable, smooth, untouched by guilt, like it had been for years. She glanced at the photo on the table, then at my face. And she smiled. Not warmly, not nervously, knowingly. You found it, she said, like it was a game we'd been playing for years, and I had just solved the final clue. I always knew you'd get there eventually, she added. Lena stepped back like she'd been slapped. You knew Claire would find out, she asked, voice trembling. Marjorie's smile didn't move. Of course. That was the point. I took a step forward. What the hell are you talking about? She dropped her keys into the bowl by the door with a soft clink. Eric was weak. Easy. But you always needed something to fight. You were never content just being. So I gave you a reason to leave. I gave you freedom. You should be thanking me. You destroyed my marriage. I freed you from a lie. You seduced my husband. She tilted her head, amused. Darling, he came willingly. Lena looked like she was going to be sick. Why would you do that to her? To any of us? Marjorie finally looked tired. Just for a second. The cracks showed in her carefully painted face. Because your father did worse to me, she said. And no one blamed him. She turned to me. He slept with his secretary for 2 years while I raised you girls like nothing was wrong. I forgave him. I let it go. And still, he never looked at me the same way again. So you punished everyone else, I said. I made a choice, she said, voice sharp. To take back control. And I won't apologize for that. The room was silent, thick with everything she'd just confessed. Then, Lena asked quietly, what did you use against Eric? Marjorie paused, then smiled again. Something he never wanted you to know, she said. But that's his story to tell. She brushed past us and disappeared down the hall. I didn't follow. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. And I had been her pawn all along. It's a strange thing, unraveling a life you thought was your own. For so many years, I believed that what we had was real. That the house, the dinners, the vacations, the laughter, the love, all of it was genuine. But it was all built on layers of secrets. Eric's secrets. Marjorie's secrets. And my father's. Now, it's my turn to dig through the wreckage, to search through the broken fragments of my past and find the parts that were real. Lena had gone to bed, and I was left alone in the quiet house, the faint smell of Marjorie's perfume lingering in the air. I couldn't sleep. Not now. Not with everything I'd just learned. I needed answers. And the only person who could give them to me now was Eric. But getting answers from Eric wasn't going to be easy. He was never good at facing anything head-on. Not the betrayal, not the lies, not the emptiness. He'd always swept things under the rug and hoped they'd disappear. Not this time. I pulled up his number again. The screen seemed to mock me. 19 calls. 19 missed calls. It felt like a lifetime since that first one, where I had begged him to fix things. Now I wasn't begging. I was demanding. I dialed. It rang. Once. Twice. And then it picked up. Claire. His voice was rough. Unsteady. He sounded broken. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt vindicated. But I didn't. Eric, I said, my voice calm but firm. I need you to tell me everything. A long pause. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. About you and my mother. About the blackmail. About everything. Another pause, this one heavier. Claire, you don't know what you're asking for. I know exactly what I'm asking for, I said. I know about the hotel. I know she had something on you. You've been hiding it for years, and now it's time to tell me what it is. There was silence on the other end. I didn't want you to find out this way, he said, his voice thick with regret. You should have never lied to me in the first place. I didn't lie, he said, a hint of defensiveness creeping in. I didn't want to lose you. Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. You did. Another long pause. And then, slowly, he spoke again. It's not what you think. She didn't have me under her thumb. I didn't stay because of blackmail. Then why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why stay with her? He sighed, deeply. Because I didn't have a choice. I felt my heart race. What do you mean you didn't have a choice? I don't know how to say this, he started. But your mother was in deep with some people. People I shouldn't have gotten involved with. My stomach churned. What kind of people? Criminals, he said. The kind of people who don't let you walk away. I blinked, trying to process his words. What are you talking about? I never wanted you to know this, Claire. But I was in debt. Your mother, she helped me out. But it wasn't just with money. She did things I couldn't get out of. I sat down hard, the weight of his words hitting me all at once. What things? He hesitated, and I knew he was stalling, looking for a way to tell me without completely shattering what was left of our marriage. But I wasn't giving him the time to soften the blow. Eric, just tell me. What did she do? There was a long silence. And then he spoke, quietly, with shame in his voice. She was involved in laundering money. For a couple of very dangerous people. The words hung in the air like poison. I could barely breathe. What? Are you serious? I didn't know at first. I didn't know what she was really involved in, he said. But then I got too deep. I tried to pull away, but she threatened me. If I left, if I told anyone, I'd be destroyed. Destroyed how? I whispered. What did she have on you? His voice cracked. I was laundering money too. Through our company. Through the foundation. I had no choice, Claire. She had everything. Every part of me. I could feel the world spinning around me. This was the secret, the one she kept hidden so carefully. It was never about the affair. It was never just about us. It was about power. And control. And blackmail. She knew about the money, Eric continued, his voice low. She knew I was in too deep. And she made it clear if I didn't do exactly what she wanted, everything would come crashing down. She didn't just use me, Claire. She used everything I ever cared about. I felt sick. Sick that I'd married a man who had been so far gone. Sick that I'd never suspected. I never wanted you to be part of this. I never wanted you to know, he said, his voice pleading now. But Claire, I love you. I always have. You love me, I said, almost laughing, but the sound was hollow. You never loved me. You loved her. You loved her control over you. You loved the safety it gave you. And you let us suffer while you stayed in the dark in your little bubble of lies. I was trying to protect you, he cried. I didn't know how to fix it. I couldn't just leave her. But you never tried, I said softly, my heart breaking for what I was hearing. You never tried to fix anything. Another long silence passed between us. I know, he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. I know. And that was it. That was the moment everything cracked wide open. I didn't hang up the phone right away. I just sat there, staring at the empty space in front of me, feeling the weight of his words crash into me again and again. She wasn't just a wife trying to keep her marriage together. Marjorie had built an empire of lies, an empire of control. And she had done it at the expense of everyone in this family, even Eric, who had let her pull the strings. But what struck me the hardest was how much of it had been a game to her. A way to make us all pay for her own bruised ego. I hung up the phone, but I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel victorious. I felt something else, something darker. A sense of betrayal, yes, but also a sense of loss. A loss of the life I thought I'd had. A loss of the man I thought I knew. But as I sat there, alone, in the cold silence of my apartment, something else began to rise inside me. I wasn't going to just walk away anymore. I wasn't going to let them keep controlling me. Not Eric. Not Marjorie. Not any of them. I was going to take back my life. And I was going to make them all pay. I woke up to the same numb feeling. It wasn't sadness or anger, not yet. It was just emptiness. A dull ache in my chest where my heart used to be. But the emptiness didn't last. The pain was fading, replaced by something far more dangerous: clarity. It took me a while to understand that what had happened to me wasn't just a betrayal. It was manipulation. I wasn't a victim of a failed marriage. I wasn't a casualty of love lost. No, this was something bigger. A conspiracy. One that had been carefully orchestrated for years, maybe even decades. Marjorie had created a web of control, not just around Eric, but around everyone she could trap. My father, my mother, even me. But now it was time to break free. The phone call with Eric had been the catalyst. I had the answers I needed. But answers weren't enough. I needed to know everything. And to know everything, I had to go where no one would expect me. To the heart of the family's darkest secret. I knew where to start. The foundation. It wasn't just some charity. It wasn't just a place where Marjorie and Eric had their picture-perfect lives. It was the front. The mask. The place where the dirty money was laundered, where deals were made in the shadows, and where everyone turned a blind eye to what was really going on. I picked up my phone again and called the number I'd written down earlier. Arthur Hayes, the accountant who had been working with the family for over 20 years. A man who had always kept his distance, always played the background, but knew more than he let on. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Arthur Hayes, he said, sounding professional, but there was a hesitation in his voice. Arthur, I said, my voice tight with purpose. It's Claire Bennett. There was a sharp intake of breath. Ms. Bennett, he said, then hesitated. How can I help you? I need you to tell me everything you know about the foundation, I said, cutting to the chase. Everything. I'm not asking for favors, Arthur. I'm not asking for your protection. I'm demanding the truth. A long silence. I can't, he started. Don't tell me you can't. I know you know everything, I said, my voice growing colder. I know you know about the money laundering. I know you know about the dealings with the people Marjorie and Eric have been working with. I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing, Arthur. Help me, and I'll make sure you walk away clean. Help me, and we both get out of this. But if you stay silent, I'll make sure you never see daylight again. He didn't say anything for a long time, and I could hear him breathing on the other end, the weight of my words settling in. Finally, he spoke. I can't do it over the phone, he said quietly. Meet me tomorrow. The old office. 3 p.m. Come alone. I hung up without saying another word. This was it. The first step toward exposing everything. The first step toward breaking the chains that had kept me bound for so long. The next day, I dressed in something simple, a black jacket, jeans, boots. I didn't want to look like I was on some kind of mission. I didn't want to give anything away. When I arrived at the old office building, a nondescript glass structure that had been there for years, I made my way to the back entrance. The place had long since been abandoned. It was quiet. Empty. Arthur was waiting for me inside. He was an older man, in his late 50s, with sharp features and a tired look in his eyes. He wasn't afraid of me, not yet, but I could tell he was cautious. He knew what I was capable of, even if he didn't want to admit it. You came, he said, nodding toward the empty chairs. I always keep my word, I replied, sitting across from him. He stared at me for a moment, like he was debating whether or not to say anything. Then, with a sigh, he leaned forward. You're right, he said, voice low. I know what your family has been involved in. I've been involved too. But it's too dangerous. You don't understand the kind of people they're mixed up with. I understand more than you think, I said. Tell me everything. Arthur hesitated, then looked around as if checking for any hidden listeners. The foundation, it's not just a charity, Claire. Your mother started it as a cover, a front to move money around. She got in with the wrong people, and when she realized how deep the connections were, she couldn't pull out. She was in over her head. And Eric, well, Eric became her partner in crime. He didn't have a choice after a while. He was as much a victim as he was a participant. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. And you? Where do you fit in? I'm the one who kept the books. The one who made it all look legal. But it wasn't. We were laundering money for a variety of people. People in politics, in finance, in criminal organizations. They used your mother and Eric as pawns. But she was always the mastermind. I sat back in my chair, trying to absorb it all. My mother wasn't just a woman scorned. She wasn't just seeking revenge. She had built an empire of lies, an empire of crime, and she had done it all with a smile on her face. Arthur continued. And the worst part? They all protected each other. Your father knew. He knew what was going on, but he stayed silent. He kept his head down, let your mother handle it. But he wasn't clean either. He had his own involvement. I closed my eyes for a moment. The betrayal hurt, but it wasn't just the personal pain that burned now. It was the realization that everything I had ever believed was a lie. I need everything, I said, opening my eyes and locking my gaze on Arthur. I need the files. I need the evidence. I want to take this down. Arthur's face darkened. You're playing with fire, Claire. You have no idea what you're getting into. I'm already in too deep, I replied coldly. Now I'm getting out. He stared at me for a long time, his eyes searching mine as if he were trying to figure out if I was bluffing. Finally, he nodded, slowly. I'll get you what you need, he said, his voice resigned. But you have to promise me one thing. What? You'll be careful. This isn't just about money or family anymore. This is about survival. I stood up. I'm done surviving. I'm ready to fight. As I walked out of that room, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my freedom anymore. I was fighting for the truth. And once the truth came out, nothing would ever be the same. The silence that followed Arthur's warning stuck with me longer than I'd expected. As I walked away from the old office, the gravity of what I was about to do began to settle on me, like a weight pressing on my chest. This was no longer just about exposing my family's lies. This was bigger than me. This was about taking down a criminal empire. And I was right in the middle of it. Arthur had promised to get me the files, the documents, the proof I needed to take this down once and for all. But there was no way I was going to sit around waiting. No way I was going to put my faith in someone else to make the first move. The deeper I went, the more I understood that this wasn't just a battle for revenge. It was a fight for control, for my life, for my future, for the truth. And that meant I had to get my hands dirty. I didn't wait long before I started digging through the old records. Arthur came through with everything he promised. The files, the accounts, the names of people who were tied to Marjorie and Eric. And the list was more extensive than I could have ever imagined. But the deeper I went, the more I realized just how interconnected everything was. There were powerful people involved. People with connections to both organized crime and legitimate businesses. I was shocked to see how many influential figures were wrapped up in this web. Senators, business tycoons, even a few names from the media I recognized. And somewhere in the middle of it all, my mother had orchestrated it all. She had built this empire not just for the money, but for the power. And Eric had been her partner, too afraid to walk away. But now I was no longer afraid. I couldn't afford to be. I set up a meeting with Arthur in a small cafe on the edge of the city. I needed to hear more, to know exactly who I was dealing with. He arrived a few minutes after I did, his usual stiff appearance giving way to the nervousness that seemed to cling to him. He sat down, glanced around, and then placed a thick folder on the table between us. "This is everything," he said, his voice low. "It's all there. The deals, the accounts, the names. If you go public with this, Claire, they won't stop." I opened the folder carefully, already knowing what I'd find inside. And as I flipped through the pages, the names blurred together in a dizzying swirl of corruption. The scale of it hit me harder than I had expected. This wasn't just some petty family drama. This was a global operation. There were transactions tied to offshore accounts, evidence of bribes paid to politicians, shady land deals, and money funneled through the foundation, all of it leading back to Marjorie. She had set this up like a game of chess, each move calculated, each pawn in its place. And Eric. Eric had been a pawn too. I looked up at Arthur, a cold anger settling over me. "How could you be a part of this?" I asked. "How could you sit there, helping her, all this time?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes darted away, and I saw guilt flicker behind his usually neutral expression. "I didn't have a choice," he muttered. "You don't understand. Once you're in, you're in. They make sure you stay in line. But you're not in anymore," I said. "You're helping me now." Arthur's eyes met mine, but there was a sadness in them that I hadn't seen before. "I should have helped you sooner, Claire. But I didn't think you'd ever be this deep. I didn't think you'd ever find out." "I'm already in too deep," I said, my voice steady. "Now help me get out." "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, nodding. "But you need to be careful. These people, they don't care who you are. They'll do whatever it takes to protect themselves." I nodded, already thinking ahead. "I know. And I'm ready." The next few days were a blur of research, meetings, and phone calls with Arthur. We began to map out the full scope of the operation, pulling in other resources, legal experts, hackers, anyone we could trust. But as we got closer to the truth, the more dangerous it became. I spent hours every night reviewing the documents, piecing together the puzzle, trying to figure out who was behind it all. And then, finally, I found something that made my blood run cold. A name. A name I hadn't seen before. Daniel Westbrook. The name didn't ring any bells, but the more I dug, the clearer it became. Daniel Westbrook wasn't just some anonymous businessman. He was a major player in both the political and criminal world. He had connections to a well-known cartel operating out of South America, and he had been involved in a number of high-profile illegal deals. And somehow, Marjorie had found a way to get in with him. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized just how deep this ran. This wasn't just my mother's secret anymore. This was about the entire system that had been built around her. And now I had to bring it all crashing down. But with every step I took, I knew the stakes were getting higher. The people behind this weren't just criminals. They were untouchable, powerful, and they wouldn't let someone like me, someone from a broken family, take them down. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now. I grabbed the phone, dialing the number I'd memorized. "Arthur," I said, my voice tight. I need everything you've got on Daniel Westbrook. I need to know who he's working with. I need to know who his connections are." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You sure you want to go down that road, Claire?" Arthur asked, his voice a warning. "I don't have a choice anymore," I said. "It's all or nothing." He didn't argue. "I'll get you what you need." I hung up, my mind racing. I wasn't going to stop until I had all the pieces, until I could take down this entire network. Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. And I was going to get it. Later that night, after the noise of the city had quieted down, I sat alone in my apartment, going through the files once more. It felt like a dream. A terrible, twisted nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. My entire life had been a lie, and the more I uncovered, the more I realized that there was no turning back. But I had to keep moving forward. I had to finish this. And when I was done, I'd make sure they paid for every lie, every betrayal, every choice they made that led me to this moment. They would pay. The night was heavy with a sense of finality as I sat at my desk, staring at the documents spread across the table. Everything I had learned, everything I had uncovered, was about to come to light. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret that had been carefully concealed for years. And yet, despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling within me, anger, fear, determination, there was one truth I couldn't escape. This was the moment of reckoning. For my family, for me, the truth was finally out. And now, there was no turning back. Arthur had come through. He'd given me everything I needed to tie it all together. The names, the transactions, the connections, everything led back to one person, Daniel Westbrook. The criminal mastermind pulling the strings behind the scenes. The one person my mother had sold her soul to, the one who had been controlling everything from the shadows. But I wasn't just going to expose him. I wasn't just going to bring him down. I was going to tear down the entire system, starting with my own family. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew who it was. "Claire," said the voice on the other end. It was Eric. His voice sounded different, heavier, like he was carrying a weight he couldn't shake. "We need to talk." I let out a slow breath. It wasn't the time for a heart-to-heart. Not now. "I've heard everything I need to hear," I said, my voice cold and sharp. "I don't need to talk to you. You made your choice." "Please," he pleaded. "We're family. We can fix this." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I cut him off. "You've been living in a lie for so long, Eric. But now, you've got a choice. Either you come clean and face the consequences, or you stay silent and let the world see what kind of man you really are." There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear his breath, shallow and labored. He didn't have an answer. And he knew I was right. I can't do this, Claire," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm too far in. If I go down, I'll take everything with me. You don't want that." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his words like a punch to the gut. "Then stay in the shadows, Eric. But I'm not staying there with you. I'm done living in your world of lies." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment, hearing the finality in the click. It wasn't over, not yet. But in that instant, I knew I had made the right choice. I couldn't keep carrying their burdens. Not anymore. The next day, I showed up at the location Arthur had suggested. A small, nondescript building in a forgotten part of town. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew it was time to confront everything, to bring the truth to light, and expose the web of corruption that had defined my family's life. Arthur was already there, waiting by the door. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking. He looked like a man who knew the storm was coming and was powerless to stop it. "You're sure about this?" he asked, his voice low, almost anxious. "Once you do this, there's no going back. They'll come for you, Claire. For all of us." I nodded, my expression resolute. "I don't care anymore. I'm not going to let them control me. I'm going to make sure they pay." Arthur stepped aside to let me in, his face a mixture of fear and awe. He was terrified of what I was about to do, but he knew it had to be done. Inside the building was a small conference room, a long table at the center, and a few chairs around it. But the person sitting at the end of the table was not who I had expected. Daniel Westbrook. I froze for a moment, taking in his presence. He was everything I had imagined, tall, imposing, with a presence that filled the room. But there was something else there, too, a cold, calculating look in his eyes, like he was already 3 steps ahead of me. "Claire Bennett," he said, his voice smooth, almost amused. "I've heard so much about you." I stepped forward, my anger rising, but I kept my voice steady. "You've heard the truth. And now you're going to pay for everything you've done." He raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair. "Is that so? You really think you can take me down? You've barely scratched the surface of what's been built. There's no way you can win this fight." I took a deep breath, not letting his words shake me. "I don't need to win the fight, Daniel. I just need to expose the truth. And once the truth is out, it's game over." I placed the folder down on the table in front of him. The files, the proof, the names of every person involved in this twisted web of lies and corruption. I had everything I needed, and I wasn't afraid to use it. "You think you can stop me?" he said, his smile disappearing. "You're just a little girl who got in over her head. You're nothing compared to the power I have." I met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "I'm not a little girl. I'm the woman who's going to bring everything down, starting with you." And just like that, the power in the room shifted. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to come prepared. He hadn't expected me to have the strength to fight back. "You've made a terrible mistake," Daniel muttered, but I could see the cracks forming. His empire, the one he had built with my mother, was beginning to crumble. "I've made the right one," I said, feeling the surge of victory rushing through me. "Because now everyone will know the truth. And you'll never be able to hide from it." The media coverage came fast and hard. News outlets were flooded with the story of the Bennett family's corruption, how the foundation had been a cover for money laundering, how my mother had partnered with dangerous criminal organizations, and how Eric had been complicit in it all. The names I had given them were released to the public, and soon, the authorities were raiding Westbrook's properties, seizing his assets. As the dust settled, I sat in my apartment, watching the chaos unfold on the news. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. Not because it was over, but because I had taken control of my life. And when the phone rang again, I didn't hesitate. It was Eric. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracked. "I should have listened to you." "It's too late for apologies," I replied, my voice flat. "You made your choices, Eric. Now you live with them." The line went silent, but I could hear his labored breathing on the other end. "Goodbye, Eric," I said, before hanging up. It was over. For the first time in my life, I was free. And nothing at all, could take that away. The world had changed, but somehow I hadn't. It had been a week since everything blew up. The media had eaten it up, the Bennett Foundation exposed for laundering money, my mother's connections to international crime rings laid bare for everyone to see. Eric's name was smeared across every tabloid, his role in the scandal as plain as day. Marjorie had disappeared. My mother, the woman who'd always been so sure of herself, who had built an empire from the ground up, was now nowhere to be found. Rumors circulated about her whereabouts. Some said she had fled the country. Others believed she was holed up somewhere, hiding from the fallout. It didn't matter. As far as I was concerned, she was just as guilty as the rest of them, and she'd escaped the consequences for far too long. But as the dust settled, as the dust began to form into the new reality I had fought so hard for, I realized something I hadn't fully anticipated. The price of this victory wasn't as sweet as I had hoped. The chaos hadn't given me the closure I expected. I sat in my apartment, looking out the window, watching the world move on, seemingly unaffected by the bombshell I had just dropped. Life was continuing. People were going to work. laughing at the latest gossip, walking their dogs in the park. No one seemed to care that the world had just been turned upside down by a story that involved me, my family, and a criminal syndicate that spanned the globe. And yet, it still felt like a dream. Like I was suspended in this strange limbo where everything had shifted, but nothing had truly changed for me. The phone rang. I glanced at the screen. A number I recognized, but I hadn't expected it to call me again. Eric. I let it ring, feeling the weight of my choices press down on me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, wasn't it? The call that would finalize everything. The apology that would make me feel better, that would make the entire ordeal worth it. But nothing could make it worth it. Not the apology. Not the vindication. I ended the call. But it didn't stop there. The phone rang again. This time, I answered it. I had to. I had to hear what he was going to say. I had to see if the voice on the other side of the line could offer me something I didn't already know. Claire. Eric's voice was shaky. I need to see you. Please. My heart beat a little faster. I had no intention of seeing him. I had said everything I needed to say, and there was nothing left for me in his world. But still, a part of me wanted to understand. Why was he calling again? Was he really sorry? Or was it something else entirely? Something deeper? No, Eric, I replied, my voice firm. There's nothing left to say. I'm sorry, Claire. I really am. But I'm not the one who did all this. It was Marjorie. She used me. She manipulated me into being part of it. I clenched my fist. The words stung, not because they were new, but because they were true. I had known for years that Eric was weak. I had known he had always been under her control, but it still hurt to hear him admit it out loud. You always had a choice, I said. You chose to stay silent. You chose to stay in her shadow. Now it's too late. I know, Eric whispered, but I need to make it right. I can't live with this guilt anymore. I paused. And what exactly do you think you can do to make it right, Eric? You're just as guilty as she is. You're just as guilty as Westbrook, as everyone who's been part of this web. I don't know, he said, his voice breaking. But I need to try. I can't just let you walk away like this, Claire. You did all the hard work. You exposed them. But there's so much left that people don't know. People still think I was part of it all. I need to make sure the truth gets out. I could feel the sincerity in his voice, the desperation, but it didn't move me. I had walked away for a reason. There was no going back. You've had your chance to make it right, Eric, I said coldly. You chose your path. Now you have to face the consequences of it. Don't think I'll save you. I hung up before he could say anything else. I couldn't afford to be dragged back into the chaos of it all. The guilt, the blame, the old patterns, they were all part of the past now. I had made my choice, and it had cost me. But at least it was my choice. Days passed, and the media frenzy over my family's scandal began to die down. New stories replaced the headlines. My name slowly faded from the front pages, replaced by new drama and fresh scandals. But the questions I had been asking, the ones that had driven me to expose everything in the first place, still loomed large in my mind. What now? What did I do with all this newfound freedom? Was it really freedom if there was nothing left? I went through the motions. I went to work, kept to myself, and tried not to think too much about the wreckage left behind. But it wasn't easy. At night, when the city was quiet and the weight of the silence in my apartment pressed down on me, I found myself thinking about what had happened. How had I let myself get here? How had I let my entire life be defined by a lie, by a family that had used me and betrayed me at every turn? I had made it out. I had exposed the truth. But the world didn't seem to care. And I realized, with a chill running through my bones, that the world wasn't the problem. I was. I hadn't just been fighting to expose my family. I had been fighting to erase the past, to escape the person I had been. But in doing that, I had lost something. I had lost my connection to the very things that had made me human. The rage, the hunger for justice, the need to feel like I mattered. It had all taken a toll. I had walked away, yes. But I had also walked into an empty future. Just then, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Eric. It wasn't anyone from my past. The number was unfamiliar, but it wasn't anonymous. I answered. Claire, the voice on the other end said, calm and steady. I've been keeping track of your progress. You did well. But it's not over. I recognized the voice immediately. It was Arthur. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. What do you want now? We need to talk, he said, his tone unwavering. You've exposed the family's secrets. But you've only scratched the surface. There's more that you don't know. And I think you're the only one who can finish what you started. I was silent for a moment. The last thing I needed was to get back into the mess I'd just fought to escape. But then again, maybe I had walked away from the wrong battle. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You'll find out soon enough, Arthur said, and with that, he hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, the weight of his words pressing down on me. I had walked away, yes. But it seemed like the past wasn't done with me yet. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?